All right, boys and germs, welcome to the Daily Crack, the Outside the Van edition today. All right, Declan, what's the crack? Outside the Van edition today, usual story. We're going to be shy talking about stuff. If you're new to the Daily Crack, this is a channel or videos where I shy talk about fitness stuff, mindset, nutrition, maybe sometimes just shy talk about whatever, it depends. But if you are watching this video, put a comment in the comments below, like hashtag live if you're watching it live, or if you're watching this later on, hashtag later on. And today's topic is something I was asked in the gym the other day about stretching, and is it good, bad, or indifferent? So the title of this video is a bit of clickbait, you know, saying stretching is fucking you up your gains. It is to a degree, and I'm going to explain in a minute why stretching can be important and sometimes detrimental to the process of you getting stronger or even performing at a high level. But I'll get to that. I'll apologise if you can hear tunes banging out at the gym, because it's early in the morning here. There's a few people in training and they like to listen to hard psychedelic trance, and so do I, but not this fucking early in the morning. Just in the camera. Apologies. Alright, so at any stage feel free to comment, question while I'm going live. I'm more than happy to answer questions. But let's talk about stretching. So what is the purpose of stretching? Stretching is putting a muscle at its maximum length and pushing it slightly further in order to create length or distance between joints to allow for greater range of motion. Now, you have a couple of different types of stretching. You have static stretching, which is holding a particular stretch for a length of time without moving. Kind of like yoga, where you would pick a pose and move into it and hold it. Certain types of yoga, not every yoga. Sometimes yoga will be in the next type of stretching, which I'm going to talk about in a second. We'll use this other type. But static stretching, and this is the two types of stretching I'm going to be talking about. Then you have dynamic stretching, which is stretching where you will be moving through a range of motion under tension, like for example a duck walk, where you squat to the bottom and you move through it. Now you're going to be moving through points in your body and joints where it feels super fucking tight. This is dynamic stretching. Or like a Cossack lunge, where you're in the bottom of the side lunge and you're moving from side to side and you can feel a stretch through muscles, but you're moving through a movement while in that stretch. So you have static stretching and dynamic stretching. Now, let's take, for example, two examples. You're about to do heavy back squats, or you're about to go out. Morning, Shauna. What is the crack? You're about to go out and play a game of football on a field. Like you're about to play a game of Gaelic or AFL or hurling, whatever the fuck it is. My recommendation is to do dynamic stretching before you enter into your sport. Static stretching will be done at the end of your sport, and this is why. Static stretching, you're affecting the stretch reflex of the muscle and the nervous system. You're holding a stretch for a long period of time where you're requiring the nervous system to downregulate, to deactivate, to relax. So think about going into a 1 rep max or 5 rep max back squat, or needing to sprint super fast after a ball on a field. Do you need your nervous system to be super relaxed, or do you need your nervous system to be upregulated? Now, when you do dynamic stretching, you are telling the nervous system that we need to be mobile, but we need to be mobile under tension. So if I'm going to lift a heavy barbell or go out running a field, what I'm going to do is my dynamic style stretching, where I'm going to do duck walks. I'm going to go move through a range of motion in a stretch position, but dynamically. So moving through it. There's a time and a place for certain things, and this is a very old school thing. This is like, coming from Gaelic football, and I remember doing it myself. I was talking to one of the lads here at the gym, and he plays hurling over here in Melbourne, and it's still the old routine of, doing static stretching before you get on the field or whatever. Now, the majority of the time you'll get away with it, you won't get injured or anything like that, but sometimes you do. In field sport athletes, hamstring issues, tight calves are a massive problem. Lower back issues can be a lot of time from the ground, but it can also be from not enough mobility trained in off-season or between games. One of the best ways to mobilize yourself and to develop better hamstring mobility and better quads is learn to fucking squat. The squat, going below parallel, will give you the majority of the mobility you need. It's not to be forced. You don't want to be butt winking, the hips rolling in and out. You don't want to force that bottom position. But the simple journey of learning how to squat properly below parallel will give you the mobility that is required to allow you to perform at a high level at the majority of sports that are out there. Okay? I also warn people against doing like heavy like lacrosse ball work before they lift, because with the lacrosse ball you're digging into a muscle. It's like, put it this way. Have you ever been to a myotherapist or a physiotherapist and they have dug in their elbows into a muscle for a good half hour to an hour? How do you feel at the end of that session? Do you feel like you're ready to jump up off the table and fucking hit up fucking 1 rep max snatch? You fucking don't. You feel spaced out. You feel fucking away with the fairies. You feel super relaxed. Even getting a remedial massage where they just run through your body, you feel super relaxed. That's what you're doing with a lacrosse ball. You're sticking it into a shoulder, you're sticking it into a pec, you're sticking it into a glute. You're killing your nervous system. You're telling the muscle, I need you to relax. And you know what it's like, you dig in, especially when people only dig the lacrosse ball in for like 30 seconds. They dig it, just nut that out. That shit doesn't work. In actual fact, typically, what you're doing is you're making the problem worse. You're digging into a trigger point, which needs the muscle to relax. You're digging into it for about 30 seconds, which is actually aggravating it more. And then you're going into a movement that is going to be using your shoulders. So you're compounding the irritated effect. Does your shoulder get better? Does that lacrosse ball work? It feels nice. The way a lacrosse ball will work will be it's exactly like the static stretching. Do it at the end of your sport. And do it for a long period of time. If you're going to hold a static stretch, a minimum of 2 minutes. Holding a stretch for any less than 2 minutes is useless. Why do we need to hold it for 2 minutes or longer? Because there's a stretch reflex in the muscle that requires you to hold that stretch for a long period of time before you can actually reset the new length. You feel it. If you hold a stretch, like for example, the pigeon stretch for the glutes, if you hold that for longer than 2 minutes, you'll get a point in that stretch where you can feel yourself just kind of relax. You can feel the muscle itself just give. That's when your stretch reflex has actually reset to a new length. Okay? Likewise, using a lacrosse ball in a muscle, you got to use it there for a long period of time, 2 minutes plus, to really get into the muscle fiber, to really dig through that trigger point, because that's what you're trying to do. You want to dig through the trigger point until you feel change, until you create change. Then once you've worked on an area, let's say for example, I'm going to pick the shoulder because you can see my fucking shoulder. If you're going to dig through a shoulder with a lacrosse ball, spend a lot of time there at the end of your training session. Dig it out and then leave it alone for 3 or 4 days. Because what we do when we stretch or we dig a lacrosse ball in there, or you go to a myotherapist, I pointed that way because I'm pointing up to the window because we have a myotherapist upstairs, is you are irritating the area. But you're requiring blood to flood to that area, which is going to take time to heal and rebuild. So irritate the fuck out of it for a long period of time. Feel the change. If there's a knot in there, keep kneading it out until you can nut that knot out and feel a difference in it. If a lacrosse ball is too aggressive, use a tennis ball. Because sometimes a tennis ball won't aggravate the area as much, but it'll do just as good of work. Then fucking leave it. Give it 2 or 3 days to settle down. Don't train on it. Don't fucking lacrosse ball work and then fucking train on it, as I've said earlier on. Leave that area alone for a good minimum 24 hours to allow that area to heal and relax and the irritation to settle down. Because that's what happens when you go to a myotherapist or whatnot. They irritate, they create damage, they nut out the area, but it needs time to heal afterwards. So, when is stretching good? It's good, but knowing what type of stretching is appropriate at the right time. Static stretching is good for after your sport. Hold it for long periods of time until you feel a change. Dynamic stretching is good before sport. Moving into the position that you're going to be moving it, that you're going to be executing, and moving through a range of motion under tension, that's required. Duck walks, animal movements, Cossack lunges, all that sort of stuff, slow pull-ups, negative reps, all this sort of stuff is dynamic stretching for joints and muscles. That's appropriate before your sport. I hope that helps. I've shited on for long enough this morning. I'm going to let you go. Have a good day. Giddy up.